So yeah, I'm Rebecca. I am one of the co-founders and owners of Tiny Topanga. We, my husband and I, well, we'll just go right into it. Who is Tiny Topanga? My husband, Israel, and I run Tiny Topanga, and we are a family business. So we also have on the team my brother-in-law and father-in-law, and then a team of builders as well. We started building our own tiny home in 2020, and when that one sold, we didn't end up using it for ourselves. When that one sold, it became official that it was a business, and little by little we've grown our models and client base and things like that. So we're relatively new, but growing quickly. And we build in central Mexico. We build our homes in central Mexico, and we export them or import them into the United States, and we deliver all over the U.S. And when we're going to be talking today about kind of how to fit families in a tiny home. And so I did want to just take a point to say we are a family business. That's a really important part of what we do and what makes what we do all worth it. So that's yeah, Israel and his dad and brother, and then our building team. I'd love to hear from you all if you want to just put in the chat, what are some of the reasons that you guys are interested in learning from builders, and some of the reasons that you are all interested in pursuing the tiny life? Anyone? If nobody wants to share, I'll just go right into why we went tiny. Cost, yeah, that's a big one for sure, especially in places like California and the Pacific Northwest. I have land and want to simplify, love it. Financial freedom and challenge of creativity and exploration. I love all those things. I like to see the options of ways of doing things never done before. I love that too. The creativity and what you can do in a small space is so fun. Interested in learning about innovative building methods. Awesome. Access to nature, reality versus fantasy. Wow, I love this. Love it. We started building because just rent and mortgages and everything were just insane. And um, we don't need a lot. We don't have a lot of stuff. We don't want a lot of stuff. We like to be able to travel and camp and adventure. And I put a bunch of photos here to kind of brag because I just this morning landed at 6 a.m. from a trip to New Zealand that we took over the holidays. We went actually to meet another tiny house builder, but did some traveling around. And so for us, and I'm sure a lot of the things you guys already talked about, like, cost and access to nature, those are huge reasons to go tiny. The being able to live small, so you are not spending a lot, you're not worrying about, keeping up your landscaping or all the maintenance on a big house. It just makes life so much simpler so that you can leave your small home and go travel. You can take your tiny house with you. So for all of those reasons, we got interested in the tiny house world, and we have absolutely loved being able to provide that for our clients and kind of meet them with, at those goals that they have. A couple more coming in: location flexibility. You're able to get a mortgage on a tiny house. That's amazing. Living small so I can live large. Yeah, that is the goal for sure. That's the dream. Cool. So those are kind of some of the reasons that we are interested in this, and it sounds like you guys are too. And I want to spend the majority of this talk about families and kind of some tips on how to get families into tiny houses, but I also want to share a little bit about us. So Tiny Topanga, one of the things that makes us really unique is that we build with a welded steel frame. So you can see, in the photo here, that's actually my brother-in-law up there on the frame welding it. It's lighter than wood. It's really, really strong. We're able to put a lot of glass and a lot of really huge windows into our builds, and have never had any issues on the road because the steel is able to kind of, flex with the structure and the house on the road. So it keeps it lighter and really, really strong. And so that's one of the things that we kind of love about the way that we build. Um, we also, because I mentioned we build in central Mexico, we like to incorporate artisan work and craftsmanship in our builds when we can. Sometimes clients want something a little bit more modern and they don't want this look, but when clients like the hand painted Talavera tile or the hand forged copper, we like to put it into our builds whenever we can. You can see a couple examples here of the hand forged copper sinks and hand painted tiles in the bathrooms. So we like to do that whenever we can. We are also a licensed builder with Shaye's Tiny Home. So if you're familiar, this is one of the reasons that we went to New Zealand to meet her and kind of see her shop and the way that she builds. We've been building with her for over a year and a half. And Shaye's Tiny Homes have a copyrighted design, which is this hallway right here. So if you guys see this on YouTube or from builders around the world kind of using this design, they're most likely working with Shaye's Tiny Homes because that is a copyrighted design. So we're one of just a couple of builders that are licensed to do these designs in the States. And she has some really nice, really nice models for anybody really, but because we're talking about family living in tiny homes, her models are really great for that. And another thing that we like to point out in our service of building a tiny home is we are with you from the beginning to the end. We delivery is included in what we do. So when I send a quote, it's with the delivery and not just the transportation cost of it, but our team, like co-founder. So Israel and my brother-in-law Alejandro, they will go on site, hook everything up, make sure everything's working, gas, electricity, can sometimes even help with the leveling. And it's really important to us that you guys are investing in this new part of life, and we want to make sure that it works from day one. And it's not at all a small project going tiny, and so we want to make sure that that we're setting you up for success from day one. And so that's something that we really enjoy doing and find that it can be really helpful to our clients. And just a quick little note about, this is not all the tiny houses we've built, but just the areas that we've built in and are building for. So we're all over the country. I see a couple chats coming in, so I'm gonna try and look at these as we go. Looking at going tiny for 2 years. Oh, living tiny for 2 years and love it. That's awesome. We do not do homes for foundation. Sorry, I'm gonna got it jumping around, but yeah, we only do tiny houses on wheels. Thank you for the question. Okay, so we're gonna dig into how to fit a family in a tiny house. And I'm gonna, as I go through this, kind of share a couple of our models, but really the point is to kind of give you some ideas for whatever builder you work with of things that you want to make sure to incorporate if you have small kids, if you have teenagers, if you like to entertain, if you're building a space for in-laws or the grandparents, just some things to keep in mind. We do have models on our website that you can look at, but really, because we build custom, and if you come to us and you're like, we have 4 kids and we want to fit in a tiny house, we'll design something around that for you. And so these are just some ideas to keep in mind when you're working with any builder and you're trying to accommodate multiple people in a small house. So these are some renderings of our family style model, and some kind of tips that I would pull out from this is having a full-size refrigerator, a nice big living space, and multifunctional spaces. So if you can see down here in the left-hand corner, this kind of dining space opens up so you can eat inside and outside, and then folds down and you can take the stools away so you have a nice big open kitchen space. And then I think I have a better close-up of here of some play spaces. This is a cool model because you actually can fit 3 little ones in here. So if you have 1 or 2 kids, and there's an extra bunk for sleepovers, or 3 kids, and then the the stairs, storage stairs walk up here to an extended play space. So a lot of thought in this design for families with small kids. Um, Another thing to keep in mind for fitting families in small spaces is lots and lots of storage. So anywhere you can think to put storage, we tend to put a lot, as much as possible, in the kitchen. Um, and let's see if I have more. Yeah. So, there's storage under the couch here. There's a lot of storage in the closets, in the bathroom, any little nook and cranny. This, I don't have a image of it here in these, but the the stairs also pull out and have shelving underneath to provide extra storage as well. And then this is what I was talking about with the Shaye's models. They have this really nice walkway that connects the two upstairs bedrooms, which is one thing that we've heard from clients is like that's the main reason that they are looking at Shaye's models, because they have small children and they want to be able to get to their kids in the middle of the night quickly, don't want to have to go up and down stairs or up and down ladders. So that feature is something that's really, really great for families with small kids. And another option to keep in mind, whether for kids or for grandparents, is the option of having a downstairs bedroom. So this is our millennial model. It's a smaller model, 24 feet, but you could do similar things in, larger tiny homes. This model has a downstairs bedroom and then an upstairs lounge. So it kind of split level and you're comfortable, not 100% standing up, but you're comfortable going into each space with plenty of headroom. And then there's a loft on the other side as well if you needed more sleeping space. And then, of course, one of the things that a lot of you mentioned is kind of being able to still be in touch with the outdoors and nature. That's a huge thing when going small, going tiny, is really, you don't actually spend a lot of time in the tiny house. If you can help it, you're outside, the kids are playing in the grass and sand and dirt. Um, and so, yeah, being able to put a deck on, whether that's a movable deck, you could do that on a trailer, have a like enclosed, this one's on a trailer, enclosed patio connected to a pod all in one space. Or once you have your tiny home on wheels, you could build a deck around. There's a lot of things you can do with that outdoor space that makes it really great for entertaining and for multiple people. And also to kind of like separate your space. If you're working inside or cooking inside, you want the kids outside. This particular model is actually one we just saw in New Zealand. The parents of Shaye, from Shaye's Tiny Homes, this is their home. And so this was definitely designed with grandparent or grandchildren in mind. And they have a whole dedicated play space in between this area with the walkway connecting a bedroom over here and then this little play space here. So very cool for grandkids. And then another option that you can do if you don't want to be climbing stairs. I don't have I didn't take really good close-ups of this picture, but if you of this house, but if you have some time, you can check out our Instagram. There's a video of this model on there. This is where we stayed when we were in New Zealand. And that this is another option that you can do with tiny homes is, instead of building tall with the loft space, you can do a couple different units. So this is sleeping quarters, an outdoor deck, and then the kitchen, bathroom, and living quarters. And it doesn't even feel like a tiny house at that point. It's basically lots of different spaces coming together to create something very beautiful and still feel like you're outside. And that is basically my whole thing about keeping or being able to live with families in small spaces. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Pretty good on time. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer questions now and or at the breakout sessions.
Rebecca, there's a question in the Q&A about
Oh,
the
thank you.
11-foot width models, difficult for cross-country transport, I think.
Oh,
Unless, did you see that?
yeah, I do see that question. I think that might have come in for true form tiny
Oh,
home,
okay, I see.
but I can talk to that a little bit because we actually don't do the 11-foot wide models. We only do 8.5 foot wide at this point because we import from Mexico. It's a little bit tricky getting across the border with the wider units. It's something that we're looking at expanding in the next year to 2 years, is having a shop in the States to be able to do those wide models. But I will say, to answer that question, um, you, with the right permitting and the right plan, you should have no problem transporting them. So just to, even though we don't build them, you shouldn't have a problem transporting them. It just takes a little extra permitting.
Cool, cool, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that combo unit, the one where it's like you said the sleeping quarters was in one, and then the uh, kitchen and bathroom whatnot, and living space was the living space inside of which one? And it seems almost kind of like how many bedrooms were in the sleeping quarters and whatnot. Because I've when we've looked at it in the past, it's almost kind of like over two-thirds of the house is bathroom, kitchen, and living area, and then a portion of it is the sleeping and whatnot. But yeah, I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. Originally I was gonna put a link to the video in this presentation, but I know sometimes it's kind of finicky on Zoom with videos. So I'll put the link in the chat here in a second. But they have a really interesting way of building in New Zealand. Like we have our weird requirements here and they have some interesting things there as well. So it's something like it can be considered only one section of the house is allowed to have plumbing. So that's why they did it that way. So one section of the house has the kitchen and bathroom and living room, and that's basically the main house that's allowed to be on wheels. And then the other parts of the house are they don't have any plumbing in them, so just electricity. So there's one modular unit that has like a master bedroom and then a bedroom with a bunk bed in it. So that house can actually sleep, not counting the living room. It could sleep up to 6 people, and then probably in another two in the living room. So it's pretty cool. We've had Here's that video if you guys want to check that out. We've had some interest in that model, and we definitely can build something like that modular. The tricky thing about it is that it becomes pretty expensive because of the multiple trailers. So what I recommend people doing if they want to do something like that modular is to, if cost is an issue, to think about it like in chunks, like design your main tiny house that has everything in it, and then do the deck later, put a pod on later, an additional like modular unit. You can think about it like future proofing so you don't have to do it all at once. Or another kind of compromise, instead of having the three parts, is to have basically one side that has the majority of living and sleeping space in it, and then the other that's a deck and a pod. So you're just having it on two trailers, so you can still move it wherever you want to. But it helps a little bit with the cost, and also not being able, not having to transport three trailers, which is what gets really costly with all the materials and the shipping costs. But yeah, it was a really cool, we felt very lucky to be able to stay in that tiny house.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool, cool. There's a couple of questions that have come through in both the chat and the Q&A. You want to tackle those, or I
Oh,
can read
sure.
them off to you either way.
Oh yeah, okay, I see them now. What's your favorite part of a build? So I spend a lot of time with the clients, and so that's my favorite part of the build, is hearing why you're going tiny. How can we make this new part of life for you exciting and something to look forward to? It's a Like I mentioned before, it's not at all a small thing to go tiny, and so we really love being a part of of that journey for people and making it as seamless as possible. And also, some mentioned in the comments earlier, like the creativity of it. No two houses are the same. I would say those are some of my favorite parts of the build. We do sell in Mexico. However, what we have found is that the people that are interested in building and buying tiny houses in Mexico, it's not really cost effective. It's pretty economical to build in Mexico with cement block, and you can build a much bigger house for much less of the cost than you can build a tiny house. Once you start putting things on a trailer and you have a steel frame and all of that, it's pretty expensive in Mexico. Whereas in the States, it's the opposite, because buying real estate in the States is so expensive that a tiny house on wheels is a really great economical option for people. In Mexico, it's not. So we can and we do sell in Mexico. We have just found that by the time clients like kind of pursue that conversation a little bit more with us, they don't end up buying. Um, and then there's one more question here in the chats. What are the barriers to getting them into the US? There's no, I mean, we have all of that system worked out. So there's really no barriers. The client doesn't have to worry about any of that importation process. We have that all as part of the, part of the delivery. So it's not too tricky once you have the system.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I'd love to. Or I guess if anybody has any more questions, you can drop them in the either the Q&A, the chat, or whatever. But while we're waiting, love to hear more about what you really feel that Tiny Topanga does to set you guys apart. Like, what's your gem or your cherry on top?
Yeah, I would say that we're still in the stage of everything being pretty custom. A lot of people, I think, like to have a model in mind when they start with us, but no two houses are the same. We really work hand in hand with our clients. As I mentioned, the steel frame, welded steel frame is something that makes us unique, and being able to incorporate the artisan work from all over Mexico. And the majority of our build is done in-house. There's only a few things that we have other vendors come in, like to put in the trailer we have another vendor do, and the windows. But other than that, we're welding, we're building furniture, we're doing the, electricity and plumbing. Everything is really done in-house, which is really helpful because when we have, if anything comes up, their houses, things happen, wear and tear. If any of our clients have any issues, like we're able to help them troubleshoot things really easily because we built the homes ourselves. So we're not dealing with a lot of outsourced contractors or anything like that. Everything's done in-house. So that's I think another thing that really helps. I see a question here. What should potential clients really consider when going tiny? What realistic advice can you give to people almost ready to go all in? That's a good question. Some of the things that I recommend to people in a first phone call, let's say people that are just like at the beginning or anywhere really in the stage of their research, some things that you want to look for are the regulations in your area, what's allowed, what's required. Some jurisdictions have really weird requirements, like San Diego, for example. It's legal to have a tiny house there, but you have to be on the grid in some way. And if you just think about like the city, that's how they make money. They can charge you based on utilities. They can't charge you on property taxes or anything like that. So one thing is to look at your local jurisdiction, ask, are ADUs allowed? Are tiny houses on wheels allowed? What does that mean? Am I allowed to live there permanently, or does it have to be short-term living? I mean, these are all little things that like you could get around, but you want to know what the laws are in your area. You want to know what the utilities are required for the spot that you're going to be putting the tiny house on so that your builder can build accordingly. For instance, we can build an all electric house if that's something that you want. We suggest against it if you're ever going to do solar because the energy required to go all electric is really high. But we can do that. So just things like that, like what are your requirements for energy? Are you going to be using propane or natural gas? Are you going to be doing any sort of, gray water recycling? Does that need to be considered? Composting toilet? So anything utilities I would think about when you're getting ready to go all in. Having a set spot where you're going to put your tiny house. We sometimes will start with clients that are like, they're like, we'll have a place by the end of the build. And they usually do, they figure it out by the end of the build. But I would caution on that because a lot of times you want at least the first place you're parking the tiny house to go hand in hand with the build. So I would consider those two things at, as equal importance, and not like jump the gun on the tiny house before you really have a spot for it. And I heard, in the last talk they were saying, sometimes we talk with our clients for years before they actually build, and that's the same thing with us. And that's okay, like you don't feel I we know it gets super exciting, you want to go all in on the tiny house, but you also want to be ready for it. So if it takes longer to get the right spot and to get everything that you need before getting started, I would recommend doing your research and making a plan for it, um, rather than rushing into it.
That's awesome. And what would you say your favorite tiny house that you built to date is?
Well, we really love working on Shaye's models. I would say the favorite model of mine of Tiny Topangas is the Millennial. We built that kind of without a specific client in mind and just kind of incorporated all these different pieces of artistry and different finishes that we haven't put in any other home. So that one was really, really fun to build. I think it has some unique features with the downstairs bedroom. It has like a cement finish throughout, so it has that kind of industrial modern look to it. It's a really cool home, and I would love to see kind of elements from that one. I think I mentioned is only 24 feet long. I'd love to see some elements of that model extended to a bigger tiny home. I think it could be really useful in for lots of different situations. Well,
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Cool, cool. Well, just got about a minute left here, and yeah, any kind of final closing thoughts or anything for anybody who's looking for a builder right now?
Um, I would say just, reach out if you have any questions. We'll all be around at 4 o'clock as well. And I think, just to kind of to piggyback on the last question, this like what should potential clients do? Exactly what you guys are doing. Do your research, come to these events, ask a lot of questions. I think the more you can learn, the better. And yeah, thank you for everybody's participation and questions. And again, I'll see you guys at 4 o'clock. Oh, quick question. What's the timeline to deliver? From contract signing to delivery is about 6 months.